Heather, and you are watching Crime in Court. And this is episode number 10, the exculpatory evidence, and this is part 1 of exculpatory evidence. And we are going to actually, this is just going to be a voiceover because I have some slides to go through. So it's just going to be kind of a presentation. So without further ado, this case, if you've been following or watching any of my videos, you've probably at this point realized that there is so much reasonable doubt. And there's just a lot. By following this case, if you really dive into the details, you can point out many reasons why Karen is not just not guilty, but she's factually innocent, as her attorneys have pointed out in a press conference. She is factually innocent, and there are many reasons why. And I thought that this was going to be kind of like a fun little countdown, because recently Turtle Boy from his jail cell wrote the 27 reasons why there's an undeniable cover-up of John O'Keefe's murder. So these are all reasons that exculpate Karen as well. So this was his blog article that he put out. Oh gosh, I didn't put the date down. It was just a couple, it was like last week, I want to say. Anyways, it was very recent. He just put this out on his website. And I thought that this was really good because we've gone over the majority of this already. So it's a great way to count down. All right, so number 27, Julie Nagel called for a ride home. Then at the exact time when John O'Keefe's phone stopped moving, she told her brother she was going to sleep over, but ended up leaving with Jen McCabe 1 hour later. So it's interesting that she would, all in the span of, an hour or so, 2 hours at most, she sent a message to her brother asking for a ride. Then she said she was going to sleep over. Then she leaves the house. So it's very bizarre, and gets a ride home from someone else. So basically what I kind of did for these 2 episodes, because next episode will do the remainder of his countdown, I went through for each point that Turtle Boy made in his blog. I went through and I pulled out the actual factual documents that are, what's stated in the court documents to prove that Turtle Boy is not just making stuff up. This is, he has facts, and here are the receipts. So with that being said, let's read. This is the motion by defendant filed September 15th, 2022. Ryan Nagel, one of the only percipient witnesses present on the night in question who is not a suspect or closely related to Brian Albert, the homeowner, arrived at the Albert residence at 12:15 a.m., approximately the same time as Ms. Reed and O'Keefe. So they, remember, Ryan pulled up right behind Karen and John. So Mr. Nagel's observations are consistent with Ms. Reed's version of events. So he corroborates what Ms. Reed says, what Karen says. Ryan Nagel testified before the grand jury that he received a text from his sister, Julie Nagel, around 12 a.m. requesting that he pick her up at Brian Albert Jr.'s house, a longtime friend of hers for 15 years. So Julie's been friends with Brian Albert Jr. for 15 years, and at midnight she sends a text to Ryan Nagel. According to Mr. Nagel, he and his friend and girlfriend arrived approximately 15 minutes later, so they arrive around 12:15 to pick up his sister Julie. As they drove down from Dedham, down Cedar Crest and take a left onto Fairview, he observed a dark SUV coming towards them from the opposite direction, preparing to take a right onto Fairview Road. So they were right behind Karen's SUV. The dark SUV went before them, and they followed the dark SUV towards the Fairview residence. Once there, Mr. Nagel and his friends parked their Ford F-150 directly in front of the driveway alongside the property, such that the passenger side of the vehicle was adjacent to the entrance. So they're in the street, but facing, just the way they came. They're facing the same way they drove in, and their passenger door is right up against where the driveway is. So Mr. Nagel testified that the dark SUV was parked in front of their vehicle, facing the same direction, about 20 to 25 feet in front of him. Mr. Nagel texted his sister to let her know that he had arrived. Sometime thereafter, Julie Nagel came outside to greet them. She said that she wanted to stay a while longer and would most likely spend the night at 34 Fairview Road. So here she's changing her plans for the first time. As Mr. Nagel continued to try to convince his sister to get in the car, and I underline this because I think it's interesting phrasing. So Julie did not want to get in the car for some reason. We don't know, but he had to try to convince his sister to get in the car. And he noticed that the dark SUV pulled up a car's length or two farther in front of him. So Karen's SUV pulled up a little bit more, as corroborated by everyone who saw it. Mr. Nagel testified that the SUV was never in park because he specifically recalls that the brake lights were activated the entire time. So that's important because he notices that the brake lights, he made notice of the car's brake lights the entire time. And we also will hear that he noticed no damage to any of the taillight area or anything like that. So eventually, unable to convince his sister to get in the car and leave the party, he and his friends left. As they pulled up past the SUV, Mr. Nagel, who was seated in the front passenger seat of the friend's Ford F-150, observed a woman matching Ms. Reed's description seated in the driver's seat of the vehicle with the indicator lights of her car on and her hands attended to. So she's staring straight ahead and hands on the steering wheel. Mr. Nagel testified that he did not see a passenger inside the vehicle or anywhere else in the surrounding area of the vehicle. He further testified that he did not observe any damage to the vehicle and testified that the car's taillights were intact and undamaged. Okay, moving on to number 26. There was no structural damage to Karen Reed's car despite the Commonwealth's assertion that it struck a 217-pound man at a rate of speed high enough to kill him. And here is an image, a photo that's in evidence of Karen Reed's car. The back of the car, the taillight that's missing. You can see the entire housing unit for the taillight is gone. But there's no other damage other than the missing taillight. So how did that hit a man so hard that it incapacitated him to the point that it left him unconscious and with bruises and cuts and lacerations and black eyes, but no damage to the car whatsoever? It just doesn't make any sense. All right, so number 25. The Commonwealth has never stated a theory that explains how John's injuries align with a motor vehicle crash and have constantly changed their story from the original narrative of his life ending by a 3-point turn. So theory number 1, and this was debunked by someone watching Turtle Boy's show. They actually had sent in a video, and I'll show you what that looked like in a second. But so the Commonwealth's theory of this case, led by Trooper Proctor's investigation, appears to be that Ms. Reed became suddenly angry with Mr. O'Keefe outside the Fairview residence, reversed into him with her vehicle while negotiating a three-point turn, intentionally hitting him in the head with a taillight during a blizzard, ending him and shattering the taillight lens, and then fled the scene. Ryan Nagel's testimony, however, completely undermines the Commonwealth's theory by confirming that Mr. O'Keefe had already left the vehicle and the surrounding area before Ms. Reed could possibly have initiated a three-point turn, striking Mr. O'Keefe in the head. So, as we just read in the first point about Ryan Nagel, he didn't see anyone around the car or near the car, and he only saw Karen by herself. So when he left, John was nowhere in sight. But not only does his witness testimony disprove that, so does this a viewer of Turtle Boy created a video, and they showed if John was standing here, it would be, if he was standing in the street anywhere, he would be hit by the left tail light, or the left side of the vehicle, not the right tail light. So as it was disproven on Turtle Boy's show, they changed their theory, and then they came up with theory number 2. Similarly, the following inaccurate factual statements were inserted into respondents' opposition, so into the Commonwealth's motion that they submitted to the court, notwithstanding that they are completely absent from the record. 1. A new claim that defendant's vehicle traveled in reverse for approximately 62 feet before striking the victim at a possible impact speed of 24 miles per hour. So, in a new document that was filed to the court, the Commonwealth changed their theory as to what had happened, stating that it wasn't a three-point turn anymore, and now they're saying the defendant reversed her car from at least 62 feet away, and she was going at least, or at a speed of 24 miles per hour when she backed up into him. So that's their theory. And Turtle Boy debunked this again because he went there to the actual residence. This is footage from his live stream. He took a photo of where he was standing versus, that he measured out the whole 62 feet that the Commonwealth was saying she started from. And so that's his car here, his gray car here, and he's going to come back in reverse, and he did it about 3 times on his stream, and the fastest he was able to actually get to was 19 miles per hour. And at that, he said he felt he was going to die. He said it was so scary, and he said no one would be doing that. And even at 19 miles per hour, he was scared, because you can't see where you're going, and you don't know. So that's Turtle Boy getting out of his car after doing the experiment. And another thing that was interesting about it, you can see kind of from the images that the street curves a lot here. So if you're coming straight back, you're going to hit the curb, which Turtle Boy did the first time that he tried this experiment. So the second time he knew to hit the wheel and to not go into the curb, but how would Karen have known that? We don't know. And so it was a good experiment, and they debunked the fact that, and Turtle Boy has comparatively, his car would have been able to get to a rate of speed faster than Karen's because his car is, I think, a little more compact and hers is bigger. And just, I don't know anything about cars, but he was saying on his stream too that his car would accelerate faster than hers. So for her to get up to that speed in snow, in the dark, uh, it's just, it doesn't seem plausible. Anyways. All right, so number 24, Brian Higgins, that's the ATF agent. Remember, he was the one that was at the bar with them and the only other cop there that night besides Brian Albert, the homeowner. So Brian Higgins clocked into work at 1:30 a.m. after driving from New York and drinking with the McAlberts. He has disappeared, and comments from the McAlberts suggest that he is cooperating with the FBI. So it seems that the Alberts and the McCabe's are not, they might be a little fearful of what Brian Higgins might have to say if something happened in that house that night. And it appears they're not in communication like they used to be. All right, so here's from a petition by the defendant filed on October 27th of last year. Brian Higgins supposedly went to complete administrative work at the Canton Police Department around 1 a.m. So they pulled this from some kind of report, wherever they found that, but I wasn't able to find it in a police report or anything like that. But that was from the defense's petition corroborating that. All right, so the only 4 people inside 34 Fairview Road who were questioned by police were not questioned until 5 hours later at Jen McCabe's house for the friends and family meeting. And he said Jen McCabe's house, but I thought it was the Albert's house. I'm not sure. I didn't want to misquote him, but we'll go through the documents together here. So motion filed by defendant in 2022, one of Canton Police Department's first responding officers on scene, Officer Mullaney, testified that the homeowners of 34 Fairview Road, Brian Albert, never came outside to interact with anyone at the crime scene or speak to the responding officers. Instead, all of the precipient witnesses in the case apparently gathered at Brian Albert's house to get their story straight. Canton Police Department Detective Sergeant Link. Hold on. What's going on with my little laptop here? Okay, sorry. My second screen decided to do something wonky on me. Sorry about that. And it's gonna do it again. Why is it flickering? Okay. Nope. Stop. This whole time. It hasn't done anything, and now it's not cooperating. Sorry. Okay. I think this should be good. Now I don't know where I was. Okay. Instead, all of the precipient witnesses in this case apparently gathered at Brian Albert's house to get their story straight. Canton Police Department Detective Sergeant Link, who was not scheduled to work on January 29th, was asked by Sergeant Good to respond to the scene for some unknown reason to conduct interviews with Brian Albert and his family. Sergeant Link arrived at Brian Albert's house at approximately 6:24 a.m. and was only on scene for about an hour before returning to the Canton Police Department. So this guy didn't have work that day, or he wasn't scheduled to work, and he gets called in and he comes to Brian Albert's house. He's there for less than an hour to take witness statements. I don't know. Sergeant Good and Sergeant Link first interviewed Jennifer McCabe, Brian Albert's sister-in-law, at the crime scene. During the interview, Jennifer McCabe gave a relatively innocuous statement indicating that she had seen Ms. Reed's vehicle outside the Fairview residence shortly after midnight and texted O'Keefe about where to park, but that no one ever came inside. So she also confirmed that she did not see O'Keefe's body on Brian Albert's front lawn and that she left the residence at 1:30. But remember, we don't see her phone leave till closer to like 1:50. She says she leaves at 1:30 with her husband and gave her nephew's friend Julie Nagel a ride home. Next, Sergeant Good and Sergeant Link went inside the Albert residence and conducted what appears to have been a group interview with Brian Albert, Nicole Albert, and Matthew McCabe. Did I miss Jen? The three witnesses, all of whom have been prime witnesses, or the three witnesses, all of whom should have been prime suspects. They're being labeled or categorized as witnesses for this case, but they were in that house that night, and you got someone saying he went in the house and a bunch of people saying he didn't, but they should be suspects because their statements are suspicious. They were not separated and were interviewed by Sergeant Good and Sergeant Link together inside Brian Albert's home. So all of them together. All three witnesses stated that O'Keefe was invited to Brian Albert's, but he never arrived. So they were really sticking with that. He never showed up. Brian Albert's sister, Julie Albert, also appeared at Brian Albert's residence that morning. Julie Albert testified at the grand jury that she went to Brian Albert's house at 8:30 a.m. on January 29th to drop off Dunkin' Donuts for Brian Albert Jr.'s birthday. She explained that when she got there, Brian Albert Sr. insisted that she come inside, and he told her that there had been an accident. However, in a prior statement to Sergeant Buchanan and Sergeant Tully on February 10th, Miss Albert accidentally let it slip that she actually found out about John dying when her phone woke her up at 4:55 a.m. to a call from Jennifer McCabe. Thus, in a prior statement to law enforcement, Julie Albert indicated that she was notified about John's death before Karen Reed ever found John's body. So, there's that. Julie, this is a statement coming. This is the interview basically reiterated by whatever trooper took it. It was either Proctor or Buchanan who took her statement. So this is in the trooper's words saying, for Julie and Chris's statement, Julie told us that she was asleep at 4:55 a.m. on January 29th, 2022, when her phone woke her up, and it was Jen's missed call. And that is how she found out about John's ending. So, I mean, it's in their statement, but she told whoever was on scene that she found out then, or when she brought the donuts that morning later. In this, this is a motion from the defendant. At 9 a.m., after apparently conferring with Brian Albert, her sister, her husband, and Julie Albert outside the presence of the police, Jennifer McCabe personally called Sergeant Link and asked him to return to Brian's home. Remember, she called him after they had already given their original statements on the scene. She called him back to Brian Albert's house. So this is more proof showing that they got their story straight, concocted some kind of story, and called Sergeant Link back. So Brian, she had suddenly recalled some new information that she was not sure if law enforcement was aware of. So she just wanted to make sure. She's just being so nice and just wanted to make sure that law enforcement knew that she had some information on Karen. She wanted to change her statement. So this time, in the presence of Brian Albert. So Brian Albert is in the presence of all of these individuals when they're making statements. But anyway, so this time in the presence of Brian Albert, Ms. McCabe reported to Sergeant Link for the very first time that while they were driving around that morning looking for O'Keefe, Miss Reed made a statement in the effect of, "I hope I didn't hit him," and then repeated it again on the scene of the crime. Thus, after meeting with Brian Albert, Jennifer McCabe changed her story to insinuate that Ms. Reed had hit O'Keefe with her vehicle. Brian Albert also made sure to inform his close friend, Brian Higgins, that's the ATF agent, that O'Keefe's body had been found. Brian Higgins testified at the grand jury that on January 29th, he woke up to a call from Canton Chief of Police. After ignoring the chief's call, he did take a call from Brian Albert, who informed him that the authorities had found O'Keefe. Thus, in the hours after O'Keefe's body was found, Brian Albert, Nicole Albert, Jennifer McCabe, Matthew McCabe, Julie Albert, and Brian Higgins all immediately convened at Brian Albert's house to discuss the instant investigation. So, yeah, I mean, they definitely all reconvened after incidents happened that morning. And then even down here, you see, given that Brian Albert and Brian Higgins were so closely tied to the Canton Police Department, jurisdiction was transferred to the Massachusetts State Police, despite the fact high-ranking members of the Canton Police Department have continued to insinuate themselves into the investigation. So the case was transferred to Trooper Proctor and Buchanan and under Tolley. Those are the state police that were investigating. But even so, it was under their jurisdiction after they found out that O'Keefe had passed from his injuries. But people, Brian Albert and the chief from Canton Police Department, have inserted themselves multiple times throughout the investigation. So we'll find out more about that too. All right, moving on to number 22. No one heard a motor vehicle collision in the snow that was loud enough to end a man's life. These are statements from the homeowners. Brian Albert's statement. Brian stated he did not see a vehicle out front of his house, did not know John and Karen were outside, and did not hear any loud noises from the street. Nicole Albert, the female homeowner, says, later on, during the morning hours of January 29th, Nicole stated that she was still in bed when her sister Jen came into the room and shared with Nicole what had transpired outside, and that John was found deceased on the edge of her property by the street in the snow. Nicole stated that she never left her home, and by the time she came downstairs, Canton Fire Department must have transported John and Karen from the scene. So John had already been taken from the scene by Canton Fire Department when Nicole wakes up, and she heard nothing and saw nothing and didn't even know until her sister tells her the next morning. All right, so this is the statement from Matthew McCabe. While at 34 Fairview Road, Matthew stated he observed a big, dark SUV parked to the right of the house. Matthew stated he was making these observations from the front door. Remember, him and Jen are just standing in front of the front door, apparently, watching out the window. Matthew stated he looked out the front window and observed the big, dark SUV moved to the other side of the property, approximately 15 to 20 feet. Matthew was not sure how long the vehicle was outside for, but did not hear any loud noises or screaming from inside. So he says he didn't hear anything. Matthew stated both times that he observed the vehicle on the street. The headlights were facing toward Chapman Street. Matthew stated he observed the tire tracks in the snow on the street in front of the house. Matthew described the pattern as a wave or a V. Matthew stated the tire tracks went from the curb in front of 34 Fairview towards the neighbor across the street and then back towards the curb. The pattern of the tracks were consistent with making a three-point turn. Matthew stated he did not see these tracks prior to the big black SUV arriving. So he's saying that he's attributing the V shape to Karen's car. But does he know? Did he see Ryan Nagel's car, his friend's car, drive away? Like, how do they know that it was Karen's V shape? And does it matter? Because she admits that she made a three-point turn. Anyway, so okay, Jennifer McCabe's statement. While at 34 Fairview Road, Jennifer observed a large black SUV on the street outside of the house and went to the front door. The black SUV did not pull into the driveway, but parked on the street by the entrance of the driveway. Jennifer observed the black SUV parked out front and texted John, "Hello, pull up beside me," at 12:31. Jennifer texted John again at 12:40 a.m., "Hello, where are you?" and then again at 12:45 a.m., "Hello." When Jennifer sent the last text to John, she observed the black SUV drive away and assumed that Karen and John went home. So this is her first statement. She sent several texts to John, she admits, and then she just thinks that they drove away. They decided not to come in. So, but then in real time, as it's happening, she is texting him and calling him, constantly. She made many calls to him at that moment when he wasn't answering. So she, in her statement, she acts all nonchalant, like, "Oh, I just didn't think that they were coming in. I just thought they left. I thought they decided to go home." So I don't know. What do you guys think about that? So Jennifer stated that John did not reply to any of her text messages. She stated that she first observed the vehicle parked on the street by the driveway facing the direction towards Chapman, then observed the vehicle travel along the road towards the left side of the property in the area of where John was discovered in the morning. Jennifer and her husband left the residence at approximately 1:30 and went home. Now, this is Jennifer McCabe's second statement, and it's taken February 1st, so a few days after. Jen said that while she was at the house, someone said that there was a car outside. So now she wasn't saying that she was just standing there. She was saying she was alerted to the fact that there was a car out there. So there's so many more details in this description. I just want you guys to pay attention. So Jen looked out the front door after someone alerted her now, and saw the car. She assumed it was John and Karen. She said that she did not notice what kind of car it was. She's not good with identifying cars and was not able to provide a description of the car. She noticed that the vehicle was facing the opposite direction of how it would have been if they had followed the directions provided earlier. Jen then texted John at 12:21 a.m. here. She texted John again at 12:31 a.m. and told him to pull behind her vehicle. She looked out the window a little while later and noticed that the car was further away from the house, closer to the neighbor. At 12:40 a.m., she texted again and said, "Hello, where are you?" There was no response from John. Jen said that her phone shows a call from her phone to John and around that time, and that she thinks she dialed him by accident when she was putting her phone back into her pants pocket. But we see in our timeline that she called him many times. So unless she butt dialed him many times, I don't think that that's possible. The next time she looked out the window, the car was gone. She did not think anything of it and thought that they just decided not to come in. But again, she kept calling him over and over again. Jen said that she and her husband were at the house from around 11:45 a.m. to, now it's 11:45 a.m. They didn't get there until after 12:20, according to her phone location. So now she's saying that her and her husband arrived at 11:45, distancing herself and her husband even further from when Karen and John left the bar, which was 12:13, something like that. And remember, Jen was still in the car leaving the bar at the same time as them. Anyways, so Jen said that she and her husband were at the house around 11:45 to 1:30. Again, GPS for her phone has her there at the house closer to 12:20 and leaving at about 1:47, 1:50, something like that. So she said that she and her husband drove two of her nephew's friends home and then they went home. All right, so number 21 on the list of why Karen is innocent factually and why there's a cover up, according to Turtle Boy. Jen McCabe called her friend Michael Link at 9 a.m. We already kind of touched on that. To change her story after suddenly remembering incriminating statements that Karen Reed had allegedly told her hours before. So this is according to Sergeant Michael Lank's supplemental narrative in the altered report, which I do a whole episode on. If you haven't watched, we go over all of the police reports that were submitted. And the altered report includes an additional search of the home by the chief of police that was added to Michael Lank's report. He added a couple paragraphs talking about how they found some more pieces of taillight several days later. Anyways, so according to Sergeant Lank, this is his report. At approximately 9 a.m., I was contacted at the police station by McCabe Jennifer. She asked if it was possible to come back to 34 Fairview Road to speak with her. Lieutenant Gallagher and I left immediately and arrived back at 34 Fairview within a few moments. McCabe told us that she recalled something that she was not sure if we were aware of. She said that when Reed was driving around with her and Carrie Roberts, looking for the victim, she said something to the effect of, "I hope I didn't hit him." McCabe told us that she made these statements again at the scene when the victim was discovered. She thought that Reed may have made these statements in front of a police officer, but she wasn't sure. So this is Sergeant Lank's documentation of that account of going back to 34 Fairview Road to get get additional information from Jen McCabe to add to her statement. All right, number 20 on Turtle Boy's top 27 reasons why there was an undeniable cover-up. At 5 a.m., Karen Reed's taillight appears cracked after backing into John O'Keefe's car, but does not appear to be broken into 35 pieces, which are later found at the scene over multiple searches. So here you can see a picture. It's a grainy picture because it's security footage from John's Ring camera, and I have it blown up here, but you can tell that her taillight, the housing portion of her taillight, is still there, and it shows, a slight crack or maybe a piece missing, but it definitely doesn't show, that it's broken into 35 pieces at that point, unless they're very tiny little pieces. And according to Jennifer McCabe's statement, her first statement, she said, once Karen, Jennifer, Carrie arrived at John's house, remember they all arrived at John's house and they got into one car to drive around. They looked at the broken taillight. Jennifer stated she observed a broken/cracked right taillight of Karen's SUV. So the description is broken/cracked. Eventually, it moves up to shattered and missing pieces. This is a motion by the defendant, but they are talking about Trooper Proctor's report about picking up the Karen's car at her parents' house. So the Massachusetts State Police officially assumed jurisdiction of the case upon Mr. O'Keefe's passing at 7:59 a.m. So they get the time of death, and then they get jurisdiction, and then according to Trooper Proctor's affidavit, filed in support of the geofence search warrant, Trooper Proctor claims that he and Sergeant Buchanan traveled to, I redacted the address, to the home in North Dighton, Massachusetts, which is Ms. Reed's parents' residence, for the purpose of interviewing Ms. Reed and recovering her black Lexus SUV. According to his sworn affidavit, upon arriving in North Dighton at 4:30 p.m., so he's saying he arrives at 4:30 p.m. on the 29th at the Reed's home in Dighton, North Dighton. Trooper Proctor claims that he noticed that the right rear passenger side taillight of Ms. Reed's vehicle was shattered and a large red plastic piece was missing from the taillight. According to a sworn affidavit, at approximately 5:30 p.m., Sergeant Buchanan and I seized the black Lexus LX from the driveway, and Diamond Towing transported the vehicle to the Canton Police Department, where it was secured in their Sallyport garage. So it gets towed all the way from North Dighton to Canton. I believe it's like 45 minutes or something like that. I'm not exactly sure, but roughly something like that. And then they secure it in their garage at the police station. However, Trooper Proctor claimed that the seizure and subsequent towing of the vehicle did not occur until 5:30 p.m. According to Kevin O'Hara, team leader of the Massachusetts State Police Special Emergency Response Team, or the CERT team, he received a call from State Police Lieutenant Brian Tully on the afternoon of January 29th, stating that he did not have authorization to dispatch the CERT team yet, but was going to need assistance searching for the evidence on the roadway in front of the residence located at 34 Fairview Road. So you don't have permission to go there yet, and therefore potentially keeping them from going to search? I don't know. You tell me. Subsequent reports confirm that at 5:30 p.m., the CERT team, along with Detective Lieutenant Brian Tully from the Massachusetts State Police, conducted a second search of the crime scene located outside the Fairview residence. This time, police recovered 3 pieces of red and clear plastic from the exact same area that Sergeant Length and his colleagues had searched hours earlier and saw no such evidence. Trooper Proctor claimed in his report that the plastic shards were consistent with Ms. Reed's taillight. So this is now the second search of the home, but Karen's car has been in the police possession at this point already for over an hour and 18 minutes to be exact. So it's possible, and it's possible something happened during that time. Significantly, Trooper Proctor's timeline of events, as set forth in his sworn affidavit in support of the geofence warrant, is provably false. Security footage taken from Ms. Reed's parents' residence establishes that Ms. Reed's black SUV was towed from the driveway by Diamond Towing at 4:12 p.m., not 5:30 as Trooper Proctor's affidavit suggests. Therefore, a whole hour and 18 minutes of unaccounted time in Trooper Proctor's possession. That altered timeline means that both the Lexus SUV as well as Trooper Proctor would be unaccounted for during the entirety of that 1 hour and 18 minute gap Thus, Trooper Proctor and certain personnel from the Canton Police Department, where the vehicle was towed, had unfettered access not only to Ms. Reed's vehicle and its taillight, but to the crime scene as well, for more than an hour before the CERT team executed its search of the scene. So they had plenty of time and means to plant evidence, according to the defense. Therefore, the search miraculously revealed for the first time red and white pieces of plastic found on the ground consistent with the taillight of Ms. Reed's vehicle, thereby establishing the only physical evidence against Ms. Reed in the entire case. I'm going to repeat that. The only physical evidence against Ms. Reed in the entire case is the pieces of taillight, which are questionable as to how they got there. Continuing on. The investigation of the crime scene, however, did not stop there. According to Detective Michael Link's testimony before the grand jury on February 4th, 2022, one full week after Mr. O'Keefe's passing, Ken Berkowitz, the chief of Canton Police, purportedly drove by the Fairview residence on a whim and saw from his moving vehicle an additional piece of red plastic that was consistent with the taillight of Ms. Reed's vehicle. It is worth recalling that this was a scene that had been searched, researched, and searched again by no fewer than 3 sets of police officials. So it was searched by Canton PD, then it was searched by the CERT team by Massachusetts State Police, and then it was searched. Well, we do find out, too, that Trooper Proctor made undocumented searches, which we'll get into later as well, but he went back to the scene multiple times and had undocumented searches where he found more pieces of taillight, all up to include up to 35 pieces or whatever it was. But then this is yet another search where the chief of police, Canton Police, Ken Berkowitz, again, this is him inserting himself into the case. He, on a whim, saw from his moving vehicle a piece of red plastic on the ground. But anyways, Chief Berkowitz claims that he glanced from his moving car while driving, saw a tiny shard of lens material on the ground many yards away, and at speed recognized the shard's evidentiary value and stopped his car to report the finding. Straining credulity does not begin to describe this account. Yes, it's very unbelievable. I agree. It is worth noting that one of the officers under the chief's command, Kevin Albert, is Brian Albert's brother. So there we have another Albert connection. So if it doesn't get even more incestuous, there you go. Detective Link testified that the chief of police then notified the Massachusetts State Police to report what he had discovered. However, before the state troopers arrived, Canton police officers had already responded to the scene and taken photographs of what the chief of police claimed to have found on the roadway on February 4th. So, during the grand jury proceedings, when an incredulous grand juror specifically inquired as to why the chief of police had responded to the Fairview residence and how he discovered the evidence, Detective Lanks explained nobody had called the chief. Quote, nobody had called the chief. So the chief inserted himself, basically, is what they're saying. When pressed further by the juror as to why he, quote, just wandered over there, Detective Lank recounted through hearsay, quote, he was driving down Fairview Road and he saw it, the evidence, end quote. So equally suspicious is that Brian Higgins testified that his close personal friend, the chief of police, Ken Berkowitz, called Higgins for some unknown reason in the morning. Remember, he declined or ignored the call from the chief of police right before he got the call from Brian Albert telling him of John O'Keefe's passing. So, just before Brian Albert, notified Higgins that Mr. O'Keefe had been found in his front yard. So why was he calling him? What was what reason? Some unknown reason Ken Berkowitz was calling Higgins that day. We have questions. We want to know. We want to know why. Chief Berkowitz's repeated and convenient involvement in an investigation that is outside of his jurisdiction should, at the very least, raise eyebrows, especially considering his close ties to the January 29th occupants of 34 Fairview Road. Continuing on in the motion filed by the defendant, finally, the fact that law enforcement retrieved pieces of Ms. Reed's taillight outside Brian Albert's house during multiple subsequent searches is particularly unsettling, given that a motion-activated Ring camera from Mr. O'Keefe's residence suggests that the damage to Ms. Reed's vehicle actually occurred hours later at 5:07 a.m. on the 29th, when she left the residence to begin her frantic search for Mr. O'Keefe, long after he was already deceased. Video surveillance footage captured at 5:07 a.m. on the 29th shows Ms. Reed reversed her Lexus out of Mr. O'Keefe's parking garage such that the right rear taillight of her vehicle struck Mr. O'Keefe's parked Chevy Traverse. As shown in the attached video, the exhibit video surveillance clearly shows that Ms. Reed's vehicle striking the Chevy Traverse at 0:18 seconds, causing the Traverse to jostle back and forth. As Ms. Reed drives out of frame from left to right, a flash of the white tail light bulb is clearly visible through what is an obvious crack in the red tail light lens. These sentences are so run on, I'm sorry. It is undisputed that after the Lexus struck the Chevy, it never went back to the scene at Brian Albert's house. It did, however, go to into police custody. So that is an important key note. It leaves, so Karen drops John off and she comes back to John's house. She never goes back to the scene with her car. So but she clearly hitting John's car. So how did her taillight pieces get there is a big question. In sum, the evidence establishes that the taillight lens was, in fact, not shattered at Brian Albert's house or at around 12:15 a.m. Rather, it was cracked when it contacted the Chevy Traverse at Mr. O'Keefe's residence at 5:07, hours after O'Keefe had passed. How those shards of lens actually got to the crime scene to be recovered, quote, by the CERT team is becoming clearer and clearer. So they are flat out insinuating that they were planted, the defense team. They're saying it without saying it. They're saying it. All right, so number 19, alarm.com footage from Bill Reed. So this is Karen's parents' home. Bill Reed's home, he has some alarm footage that proves that Michael Proctor lied about when Karen's car was towed and the condition of her tail light. So here is, and again, it's very pixelated because it's very zoomed in, but you can see her tail light still looks intact there. And this is the front driveway of the Reed's residence, her parents' residence, and it is 4:12 and 31 seconds in the afternoon, so it's 4 p.m. And just to kind of show you guys, I did a side-by-side, so immediately after backing into John's vehicle, you see she's still got her tail light. That's at 5 something in the morning when she hits it, 5:07 in the morning, and then at 4 12 in the afternoon, you can see she still has her tail light. It's still, this piece is still there. But after being in possession by Trooper Proctor in Buchanan and the Massachusetts State Police, it's missing the entire housing unit of the tail light there. So there's an interesting side-by-side for you guys to see. Number 18 on Turtle Boy's list, Canton police found no taillight or shoe at 6 a.m. That is very important also because first search, they found no taillight, no shoe, just cocktail glass. But the state police found taillight and a shoe 12 hours after the Canton police search. And a foot of snow had fallen. So the first search of the crime scene by Canton police. So while still unseen, Lieutenant Gallagher, Sergeant Good, and I attempted to retrieve as much evidence as possible given the weather conditions. Lieutenant Gallagher was able to use a leaf blower to blow away top layers of snow. We were able to observe a broken drinking glass and multiple patches of red, which appeared to be frozen drops of that red liquid DNA stuff. And this is actually an actual footage in evidence of those solo cups where they collected it. So 6 samples of this substance was retrieved by using red solo cups. The broken glass was retrieved and bagged into evidence. Both items were returned to the Canton police station and logged into evidence. Now the second search of the crime scene by Canton police. Members from the CERT team, by state police, members of the CERT team located a black sneaker with a white Nike logo along the side, matching the one worn by the victim. In the same area where the body had been recovered, 2 red plastic pieces of a taillight were located, consistent to the pieces missing from the defendant's black Lexus. So this is when the first time they find red pieces of taillight, or any pieces of taillight, is the second search by Canton State Police, and this is after they've already had the car. 1 piece of clear plastic taillight was located in the same area as well, also consistent with the broken taillight of the Lexus. Now this is the third documented search of the crime scene, and this is from the altered report by Sergeant Link. This is the portion that was added later to the police report that he first filed. So on February 4th, I was working the 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. shift as the detective sergeant. At approximately 8:50 a.m., I was contacted by Lieutenant Gallagher, who advised me that Chief Berkowitz was at 34 Fairview Road and had possibly discovered more evidence. Detective Taylor and I drove to the scene at 34 Fairview Road and met with Chief Berkowitz. He directed our attention to the area where O'Keefe had been discovered. I was able to observe a red broken piece of hard plastic which appeared to have been broken off of a motor vehicle light fixture. The temperature overnight had reached 45 degrees with heavy rains, which melted much of the snow from the storm that Saturday. So all the snow that they did get later on that evening, or in the day, I should say, that morning and during the day on Saturday, that snow finally melted, or were starting to melt away. So they're saying like that's what revealed much of this area, and that had originally been covered by snow. We photographed the broken plastic pieces as was in the snow and attached it to the report. So more pieces found on the scene days later, but after the snow melts. So that's convenient. Number 17. Jen McCabe never went to bed after a night of drinking and was awake when Reed called looking for O'Keefe at 4:53 a.m. And the reason we know this is because we have Jen McCabe's health data, her steps that were taken the morning of the 29th. All of her steps taken are right here. As you can see, I just pulled out this portion here starting from 12:56 a.m. going down to 1:16. So there, at this point, she's still in the house. She's still texting John here. Next, notably, she walks 255 steps at 1:24. But remember, they don't leave the house until closer to like 1:47 or so. So all these major steps are being taken inside the house. What is she doing there? I don't know. And she gets home around 2:30ish. So she's on the phone and she's pacing and walking. Like she walks a lot, because you can see it's 2:15 here and she's still doing all these steps up until 4:55 a.m. She's awake. She's not sleeping. And then this is during the search. She's calling, looking for John. They're looking for him specifically. And after this point, like 6:07, I believe he was found. So you guys tell me, what do you think? Does that prove that she was up all night? All the times seem to be, in intervals. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comments below. All right, I think this is our last one for this part. Good thing we've split this into two parts or we'd be here forever. All right, so the Canton Library video. Now this is important too, because this is going to show us that time frame in between Karen Reed leaving the house, leaving Brian Albert's house and going to John O'Keefe's house, and what her tail light looked like at that point. So, Canton Library video that would have shown Karen Reed's tail light minutes after allegedly striking O'Keefe had disappeared after being sent to Detective Proctor, and the only side asking for it now is the defense, despite the fact that it could inculpate Reed if the tape showed that she had a broken light. So if her tail light looks broken in this footage that they're asking for, that somehow got lost in the investigation, it could prove that Karen did hit him at that point. Or not prove, but it could be evidence towards that anyways. And it's saying something that she's asking for it, even though it could mean that for her, So here is the defendant's petition dated 1/1/2023 talking about that. So further, as detailed below, a 2-minute portion of the critical video surveillance footage obtained by the Massachusetts State Police from the Canton Public Library, which should have captured Ms. Reed returning to John's house from the Alberts house in the early morning of the 29th, and it would show the condition of her taillight as well. It's inexplicably missing from the surveillance footage that was produced to the defense by the Commonwealth in discovery. So the defense never received it. Is it being hidden? Is it being, I don't know. Is it purposely removed? Has it been deleted? What do you guys think? Evidence establishes that Ms. Reed I'm missing a sentence. After dropping off Mr. Hold on. The Commonwealth produced a voicemail left by Ms. Reed on Mr. O'Keefe's phone, time-stamped 12:41. So we know this. This is when she gets out of the car. You can hear her car door, the garage door, and the house closing as she walks back into the home, audibly walking across the garage in high heels. O'Keefe's former address is roughly 1 mile from the Canton Public Library. There is no question that the video equipment at the library was working. So they know the video equipment was working during those hours, because law enforcement did obtain footage. However, it's just missing those 2 minutes that they need. Inexplicably, there's a 2-minute gap on the video footage produced to defense counsel between 12:37 and 12:39 a.m., which is the precise time at which her car would be driving past the library after leaving from the Albert residence on her way to Mr. O'Keefe's residence. The defense asserts that this missing portion of the library surveillance video would have shown Ms. Reed's taillight intact because she never struck Officer O'Keefe with her vehicle. Yet, those critical 2 minutes of video footage, which would have captured the condition of Ms. Reed's taillight, are missing from the surveillance footage produced by the Commonwealth. And there you have it. That is part 1 of the exculpatory evidence. We're only just beginning because there's still so much more. And let me know what you guys are thinking right now, because putting it all out there like this, it really, it's so mind-boggling that she's even sitting in the position she's in right now, defending herself with what's going on. In my opinion, it's mind-boggling. My gosh, I don't know. I did put out a quiz or a poll if anybody's interested. What is the most, what piece of evidence do you think provides more exculpatory evidence for Karen Reed? So what shows that she didn't do it? I put a couple options on there, like the house long to die in cold search, or the federal investigation that's coming, or some other things. So if you get a second, go ahead on over to my community tab and give that poll a vote and let me know what you think. I'm interested to know what your thoughts are. I'm really interested to know what your thoughts are in this case. Let me know in the comments below. And as always, please be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. And I thank you so much for watching. Take care. Whoops, not that one.